Story time about how I cheated on my husband, lied about getting pregnant, and left with all his money. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Oh, this is gonna be a good one, you guys. A little background, my husband and I met 2 years ago. And lucky for me, he's a wealthy plastic surgeon. So a little backstory. I actually met him because I wanted to get a nose job. I made an appointment in his office and I went. We actually hit it off right away, even though he's older than me and, you know, wasn't the best looking. After the appointment, I decided I would get the nose job. A few days later, I get a phone call. Guess who it is? It's the wealthy plastic surgeon who I just saw. He asked me out on a date and I said yes, of course. By the way, at the time I was a sugar baby, so I had a few sugar daddies. I figured he would just become another sugar daddy. He took me out to the best restaurant in town, and you better believe I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. After my surgery, he would bring me food and was just really nice. Then he asked me to be his girlfriend and I decided to give him a chance. I even broke up with 2 sugar daddies to make space for him. That's when I asked my boyfriend for an allowance. He said of course. There's so much more to the story. Part 2 is up. Part 2 about how I cheated on my husband, lied about being pregnant, oh yeah, and stole all of his money. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. This was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 1, I had asked him for an allowance. Of course he said yes and offered me $3,000 a month. I accepted even though it was on the low end. By the way, I still had 1 sugar daddy at this time. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I was pretty obsessed with the Kardashians. My goal in life is to look like Kim K. So now that I had a plastic surgeon boyfriend, I decided to ask him what other surgeries he thinks I could do. I already had my nose job. Now I definitely wanted to do some other stuff on my body. But when I told him, he got really upset. He said I didn't need to change anything about me and that I needed to stop looking for attention from other men. That's when I told him that would be totally impossible and that I definitely was going to keep my other sugar daddy. He totally flips out because he didn't know I had a sugar daddy. Then he asked me if I was actually in love with him. I told him that love would grow eventually, but that I really did like him. Then he started playing hard to get, like he wanted me to apologize and beg him, but I was not the type. So we ended up not speaking for a few weeks. Eventually he comes over to my apartment and asks me what surgeries I want to get done. And back to the surgery table I went. Part 3 is up. 3 about how I cheated on my husband, lied about being pregnant, oh yeah, and stole all of his money. Well, almost all of it. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So my plastic surgeon boyfriend decides to do more plastic surgery on me. But this time, it was free. We decided to get my bum done. Again, during the healing process, he was a total angel and brought me food and took care of me. Yeah, he was also paying for all of my bills and my rent at this time, even though I still had a sugar daddy. And he knew it. A few months passed and he asked me to go to Italy with him. Of course I said yes. We stayed at a beautiful place in Tuscany and then he asked me to marry him. He had planned out this whole romantic dinner and of course I had to say yes. But on one condition, that I let go of my last sugar daddy. So I told him I would, although I actually did not. So we started planning my dream wedding. We finally got married and I moved into his mansion. Then he told me that I had to get pregnant right away. His excuse is that he's in his 50s and he really wants to have kids. I said I wanted to have a baby too, but I kept taking the pill. I mean, I am just not ready to have kids or to ruin my beautiful body. This is when my other sugar daddy started getting really annoyed because I never spent time with him. It was really hard being torn between 2 men. Part 4 is up. Part 4 about how I cheated on my husband, lied about being pregnant, and stole all of his money. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said, my sugar daddy was starting to get really annoyed at me because I never spent enough time with him. That's when I broke it to him that I was actually married. He totally flipped out, called me a user, cut me off, and blocked me from everything. So that meant I was not getting money from this sugar daddy at all. It meant I was totally dependent on my husband. Remember I said my husband wanted me to get pregnant? Well, I kept taking the pill because I didn't want to get pregnant. But my husband would ask me every single day how that was going. And I was like, it's going. I even started lying, saying that I was going to go to the baby doctor just to get myself checked, and I really wouldn't. Instead, I would go have lunch and shop. Around this time, an old sugar daddy of mine contacted me, who I still had a crush on. He was like super good looking. He offered me some money and asked me if I wanted to go on a few dates, so of course I said yes. I accepted because I really wanted to just separate myself financially from my husband. I didn't want to be dependent on him all the time. So when my husband was at work, I would go out on dates with this new sugar daddy. The sugar daddy wanted me to go on a trip with him, and I had to say no. He got really upset and started asking questions. Of course, I didn't tell him that I was married, but he started getting really suspicious. He also started to catch feelings really quick. Like he always wanted to be with me. He would text me all the time. And that's when my husband finds a text message from the sugar daddy. I basically denied everything and I told him that I no longer had any sugar daddies, but my husband did not believe me. That's when he calls my sugar daddy from my phone and tells him to leave me alone. And the sugar daddy told him that only I could make that decision. So I basically had to cut off the sugar daddy right in front of my husband. My husband was like really angry at this time. So I was on my best behavior for the next few weeks. But after a few weeks, he was still really angry. So I realized I needed to start taking money out of the account that he gave me. So I started transferring money from his account to my account. And then from my account to another account at a different bank. And guess what? My husband did not notice one bit. I had several other accounts and investments and all this other stuff, so he never really noticed if anything went missing from that one account. After a few months, I had $50,000 in that bank account. I knew it wasn't enough, so I had to start taking more money out. And then a few months after that, I was at $120,000. I knew this was enough to get me a little house somewhere and just like basically live by myself. That's when I devised a whole plan. I would leave the country and buy myself a house. Even started looking for a real estate agent in other countries. But then the poo hit the fan. My husband found my pills and asked me if I was actually trying to get pregnant or not. Once again, I started lying and I told him that of course I wanted to have a baby with him. Then he insisted we go to the doctor together. That's when he found out that I had not gone to the doctor once. He told me that if I didn't want kids, we would have to get a divorce, so I told him that I didn't want kids. That's when I told him I wanted a divorce and that I only wanted half of his stuff. He started laughing in my face and left. He knew I had to act quick because it was a matter of time before he found out I stole all that money. The very next day, I booked a flight and left. He started blowing up my phone, asking me where I was, calling me. Then he started threatening me for taking all the money in the bank account and that he hired private investigators to find me. Now I'm considering going back to him, but I honestly don't know what to do. I got myself a cute little house and even found a new sugar daddy. But I know he's still looking for me. What should I do, you guys? I think I really messed up, you guys.
I made a little boy cry. Story time. Some of you guys already know this, but I used to babysit kids when I was in high school. Now, most of the kids I babysat were angels, but one of them was the devil. And his name was Gregory. And he would go crazy if he didn't get his way. So one night when I was babysitting him, it had to be around 9 p.m. It was super dark outside. And Gregory wanted to go outside to play. So of course I told him no because it was too dark outside and it's dangerous and yada yada yada. Well, he did not like that answer. So he starts going off on me. He was even using language that an 8-year-old boy shouldn't know. And normally I was able to deal with his temper tantrums, but this time he called me a name. A very offensive name that starts with an F. I'll tell you that much. I was so offended that I pretended to get a call from his mother. And on that call, she told me that his father had just died in a car accident. And when I told him the bad news, it broke his heart. I never worked for them again.
Part 2, why you should be careful who you befriend. Once I questioned Joe, he confessed saying that it was because he wanted to make sure I was safe. I felt betrayed and creeped out. He apologized and asked for forgiveness. I told him I didn't want to be friends with him anymore. That's when he got angry and left. The next 2 to 3 days, he didn't come to school. My friends told me that he harassed him for snitching on him. When he came back to school, we pretended like we didn't know each other. On my walk home that day, I heard Joe calling my name in a low and unfamiliar tone, but he was nowhere to be seen. I don't know why, but my gut told me to run as fast as I could. I listened to it and sprinted all the way home. I made sure every door and window was locked. I was convinced that I was being paranoid at this point. Then my phone screen lit up. I looked to see many missed calls from Joe. Then I heard my name being called again. I looked up to see Joe in the front of my house, banging on the door. Everything went completely silent after 5 minutes, which felt like an eternity. The last words I heard from him was, "You'll always be my best friend." This issue was brought up to the school and Joe never showed up again. 4 years have passed since then, and just a few days ago, I got a couple friend requests on my social media accounts. It was him. I blocked him and changed all my social media names into something else. I don't live in that same town anymore, or even the same country. However, I can't help but to feel like the scared 18-year-old me again. I'm not the friendly person I once was, and I've become cautious around other people. This is why you should be careful who you befriend. When I was in junior high, I was a friendly and curious person. 1 month into the fall semester, we got a new transfer student. He was seated behind me and his name was Joe. I introduced myself to him, trying to ease attention. I showed him what we learned so far and helped him to look over his class schedule. We had 2 classes and lunch together. Naturally, we got to know each other and became friends. He was a quiet kid but talked a lot around me, so I assumed he was just comfortable with me. I made it clear to him that we were just friends and he agreed, so I brought him around my friends and we all started to hang out. Fast forward to spring break, I told Joe that I was going out of town with my family. He seemed disappointed we couldn't spend spring break together but understood. However, while on spring break, I ran into Joe at a restaurant. I didn't tell him where I was going, so I thought to myself, wow, what a coincidence. He said he was visiting family in the same town and I believed him. Then in senior year, Joe and I were hanging out at least 3 times a week. I noticed it was too much and I wanted to make time for my other friends as well. That's when things started to change. I ran into Joe, or should I say saw him in the corner of my eye when I spent time with someone else over myself. He started to become obsessive and clingy. The first few times I didn't think much of it. However, it all became clear when I questioned him and he said that he accidentally followed me.
Mom kept pooping on the shower floor and doesn't care if others step on it or if it smears all over the shower drain. We have a fully functioning toilet in our house, of course, and we don't have a bathtub, just a simple shower room with a drain on the floor and a shower head on the wall. I used to stand bare feet on the floor while I shower until one day I stepped on a piece of poop near the shower drain. It was really gross, and we don't have any pets in the house. While I knew my mom just took a shower right before me, it was absolutely disgusting because the water flushed on it and the feces smeared and diffused all around the area. Worse than it sounds. So I asked, and she said she recently discovered that it's warmer and easier to squat on the floor and poop with the hot water flushing through your body. I told her to please not do it because it was disgusting. She yelled back I'd know how good it feels if I try too.